There's a common thing that I hear going around, and it's actually reasonable. It's understandable why people would say such things. I mean, it's wrong, but it's not wrong for the wrong reasons. It's wrong for the right reasons. Ignorance, non derogatory form, and misunderstanding or simply lack of knowledge. Ignorance. Ignorance is not a bad word. Today we've just twisted it. When we say someone's ignorant, what we really mean is willfully ignorant. Just being ignorant just means you don't know. It's not a derogatory term. So, I don't know anything about gardening, so I'm ignorant in regards to gardening. I'm going to learn. So, people saying all this stuff about racism, racism, racism. Why do people seem to think only white people can be racist? Because it's true. Only white people can be racist. But you have to understand that when we say white people be racist, what we're talking about is the same thing as ignorance. We don't actually mean racism. We mean something else. Okay? So, there's a military concept that is actually perfect for this. It's called force projection. Force projection is the ability to, like, I can punch you in the face, and if I'm close enough to punch you in the face, I can project force toward you, and you would respond to that force. If I'm within range of being able to project that force, I don't even have to use it sometimes. Sometimes just being there and you knowing that I'm willing is enough to cause a change in your behavior and in your actions and decisions. Why do you think the United States has so many aircraft carriers? Well, part of it is money laundering and fleecing the taxpayers for military industrial complex projects, to build all these ships, although they are good jobs. But there's actually a legitimate reason to have so many aircraft carriers. It makes more sense than you think. First of all, when you have that many aircraft carriers, if you have to bring in an aircraft carrier for maintenance, it's not a couple days. It's a few years to overhaul an aircraft carrier. It's a city. It's literally a city floating on the water. But the advantage of aircraft carriers, and one of the reasons why we have so many of them, is force projection. Imagine I bring up the radio, hey captain, go float your boat in the Indian Ocean. Want me to attack something, sir? Nope. Want me to fly jets over and intimidate somebody? Nope. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Just float there. That's it. Just stick your boat there. And you can alter geopolitics of the planet. You can alter the decisions and direction of nations. You can alter the actions and change events of world history just by parking a boat there. That's called force projection. And that's why we have so many aircraft carriers. Besides the maintenance issue. When you have a lot of aircraft carriers, you need a lot more to be able to keep them cycling. But anyway, force projection is the issue here. So, can a black person be racist toward a white person? Fuck yeah. I've encountered a few myself. Anybody can be racist toward anybody. But most of you are impotent. You can't do anything with that racism. You have no force projection. You're impotent. So, it'd be like me trying to threaten to punch you, and I've got little, T-Rex arms. My threat is impotent. It carries no weight. It means nothing. It'd be like you taking your little plastic Home Depot kayak or sporting goods kayak over to the Indian Ocean and trying to force project like the Nimitz aircraft carrier. Will they even know you're there? You're irrelevant. You mean nothing. Okay, so you have no capacity for force projection. So when we talk about racism, what we really should be talking about is the ability to project force based on or stemming from that racism. And that's where white privilege comes from. Most of the white privilege that people perceive today was created before you were even born. You're not responsible for it. You may not even know you're using it. You may not even be aware that such a thing exists, but it does, and it is benefiting some of you and not others. Now, that doesn't make you at fault, because again, this happened before you were born. But it does mean it's more powerful if you understand it and can leverage your power to stop it, because people are being hurt by that. So we, in this country, have a disproportionate population number. The black population is 12% of the population, and the white population is 72% of the population. These numbers are approximate, plus or minus a percent. So basically, the white population has a fleet of aircraft carriers, and the black population has 2 kayaks. They have no force projection, so they can be as racist as they want, and it doesn't mean jack shit. While white people can utilize racist-based force projection without even being aware it exists. And the way that happens is, well, propaganda in the news, being manipulated by political parties, the way you were raised. If your parents were racist, you are going to be exposed to more of that. In my business in New Jersey, I even had people test me. Literally. Like they would test the waters to see if I'm a like-minded racist by saying something vaguely racist and gauging my reaction. The second time someone did that to me, I guess I was cognizant. I'm usually not very self-aware of that kind of innuendo and stuff like that, but this just slapped me in the face. The second time, I read behind the lines and tend to really take apart a sentence. And, the 2 times that happened before I realized what was going on, I was like, why in the fuck did he say that? And then I was like, oh my God. He's racist, and he's seeing if I'm racist. So he knows whether or not to continue that line of conversation. And of course, I'm not. They figure that out, and they don't continue that line of conversation. It's fascinating when it happens. I laugh. It's not funny, but it was funny at the time when you're starting to realize what's going on. It's like, wow, some of these people are they got some screws loose up there. So force projection is the problem. These minority classes of people, they have just as much racism in them as we do. It's part of our species. Racism is on a fundamental level natural. We tend to fear those things that are different from us because usually those things that are different from us can hurt us. We're taught that by our parents, and it's instinctual. Now, where racism comes into play is when you shift from irrational fear based on instinct to rational, I don't like those people, and I'm making this decision intelligently, or not so intelligently. That's when you shift from fear and instinct to racism. The original purpose of racism was monetary. We needed slaves, and those people had bows and arrows and spears, and so they were easy to enslave. And it was easy to call them savages and justify it. And slavery has no racial bounds. Black people were collecting their own kind in Africa and selling them to white slavers. Everybody wants to make money, and there's no moral, just because they're the same race doesn't mean they're going to be nice to you. But, so there's no boundaries for racism, and anybody can be racist. But the dominant population of the planet, at least in our part of the planet, white people, 72% of the population, we have force projection. They don't. We have so much force projection that we have built the racism into the very foundation of our country and our economic structure and how things operate, to such an extent that it has force projection through multiple generations. A classic example of this is redlining. Take a gander down that rabbit hole. If you actually understand what it is you're reading when you're done researching redlining, it's going to make you sick to your stomach. That we systemically destroyed an entire portion of our population through multiple generations out of, we think they're inferior savages somehow. And that was enough to justify destroying 4 or 5 generations of people. I mean, destroying them. It's poverty begets poverty. So if we can stick you in a poverty hole, that poverty will project through generations. That's the ultimate force. That's the ultimate in systemic racism, or force projection through generations. It's from a technical point of view, it's phenomenal. It's genius. From a moral point of view, it's absolutely sickening that we would do that to a people. And that's what we are capable of doing, because we have so much force projection that we can do more than impact what's happening in front of us. Our action that no longer exists now, this happened in the 50s, this happened before many of us were born. I was born in 1976. This predates me by a whole generation. And yet the impact of those decisions, of those actions, propagate through today and will continue to propagate for generations to come. It's incredible. And that's what you have to understand. Racism is the core problem, but the actual problem is the force projection that stems from the core racism problem. The result of that is you could be doing things today, taking advantage of things today that are built upon that racist infrastructure built into the country without having a single racist bone in your body. Just by being born with white skin and existing in a particular neighborhood, you are benefiting from that without having even one molecule of responsibility for it. But you do have a responsibility to fix it, because we all have to live here. So we all have to take responsibility for that. It's kind of like climate change. I don't care if it's man-made or natural. We still have to live on this planet. Elon Musk hasn't, colonized Mars yet. So we still got to live here. So it just might be worth doing something about it, lest we don't want to live here anymore. Because you're not going to save the planet. That's a fiction. That's a farce. The planet will go on just fine without us. What we're saving is the ability of our scrawny asses to comfortably live here. So we have to take responsibility for fixing it, regardless of whether we caused it. The same thing applies to racism. We have to take responsibility for fixing it, because as part of the population that makes up 72% of the population, we are the only ones who can. Like I said, take your kayak over to the Indian Ocean and try to force project. Let me know how the saltwater tastes when the waves knock you over. And nobody notices you. So we have to take our aircraft carriers, our 72% of the population numbers, our force projection, and we have to take responsibility and use that to correct the problem, because it's the right thing to do. That's all.